with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. I'm Matt Leck, another Matt, Brendan, Jamie, and Matt Binder Thursday, broadcasting probably closer to the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal than ever before in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, a throwback Michael interview with Ed Caesar of The New Yorker on his piece, The Reputation-Laundering Firm That Ruined Its Own Reputation, detailing how a renowned British PR firm, Pottinger, worked with dictators and oligarchs and deliberately inflamed racial tensions in South Africa, destroying itself in the process. Also on the program, over 800,000 workers filed unemployment claims last week, more than 5 months into the pandemic, and the number of people filing claims for unemployment benefits every week continues to dwarf previous records. Bill Barr says every police chief in every city is identifying Antifa as the ramrod of violence, which speaks to the credibility of every police chief in every city there's been major violence. This says Trump still searches for the thugs with backpacks flying from city to city, starting things. Trump suggests North Carolina voters test out their system of voting by voting both by mail and in person. Relatedly, a Fox News poll finds Biden ahead in three battleground states: Arizona, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. Facebook announces it will block advertising in the week running up to the election. Mark Zuckerberg says, "We all have a responsibility to protect democracy." A nice sentiment, but one wonders if 1 week community service is all Facebook owes our democracy. The CDC is telling state health officials to be ready to distribute a coronavirus vaccine to healthcare workers and other high-priority groups as soon as November 1st, heightening fears that the agency is under pressure to approve a vaccine before Election Day. It's coming, folks. We'll all be fine. Just vote for me. Internal Census Bureau documents a whistleblower provided to the House Oversight Committee warned that a Trump administration's plan to rush the 2020 count will reduce accuracy, negatively impact the redistricting data, and creates risk for serious errors not being discovered in the data. Not a problem for Republicans, of course. And finally, rest in peace, David Graeber, anthropologist, anarchist, and activist, known for his bullshit jobs theory, among other work. Graeber appeared on this program a couple of times, few at least, most recently, I believe, in 2018 on the bullshit jobs theory. And yeah, so rest in peace, David Graeber. Lost another one. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Hey, Brendan, how's it going?
Matt, it's going well. I'd also like to extend my condolences to those close to David Graeber. This hasn't been an easy year for anyone across the world. Solidarity with, his family and all of his comrades. And yeah.
Do you remember coming across the bullshit jobs theory for the first time?
Yeah, I think I was actually working here. I
really?
had not been familiar with his work before coming here. And that was one of my favorite interviews, like right after I started. And like once Sam put me in the frying pan to be like, all right, you're booking all the guests now. And I was like, cool.
All right.
Here we go. This guy sounds pretty good.
Yeah, Graeber's very interesting. There's obviously debate over the bullshit jobs theory as any good theory, but I think it's one of the most intuitive ones that basically capitalism is occupying people's time and rewarding certain people with basically jobs that provide them an income but aren't actually productive. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing about that. I read Bullshit Jobs, but also he has a debt. I believe the first 5,000 years is the subtitle.
Yep.
And right when I was becoming like a real lefty, meaning, and let's admit Jamie too, because she'll have something to say. Right when I was becoming sort of a lefty, branching out from the Wonk blog and Matt Iglesias to like The Nation, and getting a little bit more radical. David Graeber was one of the big figures there. I mean, his work in Occupy, I think, brought him. Hey, Jamie, how's it going? I assume you want to join us, remembering David Graeber for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I read that 5,000 Years, a very interesting book. But yeah, bullshit jobs, a very intuitive theory that I think that even if there's certain, debates over it, I think intuitive theories like that kind of make sense to people on a mass level are important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're so important. And David was, by all accounts of everyone who ever interacted with him, a really nice guy. Just a few months ago, I watched him give a talk it was put on by the Libertarian Socialist Caucus of DSA. They just emailed him, asked him to do it. And he was like, yeah. And it was a really good Zoom talk about some issues related to the pandemic. And it definitely talked a little bit about the bullshitness of various jobs as being revealed right now. He was there when some of my friends who occupied the new school got let out of jail. He was there waiting for them. And then a little while later, he was instrumental in the founding of Occupy Wall Street. And did you mention that he's credited with coining the term, "We are the 99%"?
I did not mention that. I had forgotten that. But yeah, there he is.
He accepted credit for the 99% part. He said that other people expanded it out into a very effective political slogan, which is extremely anarchist of him, if you think about it.
Yeah. So rest in peace, David Graeber. Check out his works, everybody. Bullshit Jobs, Debt. I'm sure there's other stuff he wrote. I think I have a collection of Occupy Wall Street related writings that he contributed to. So very sad news again today. And with that said, I want to turn to introducing the interview for today with Michael Brooks, another throwback interview with Michael. This is with Ed Caesar of The New Yorker. And Brendan, you were saying this is one of the ones you would have picked for from your time since you've been here. Basically about Bell Pottinger, a Tory sort of associated PR firm in the UK, helping South Africa inflame racial tensions. One thing I want to say before we play this, though, is we had some software difficulties back in the day when we were in the studio, those old days. And sometimes when we put the Chiron up, instead of showing the Chiron to you, the viewers, it would just make the entire screen blank. And so we lost about 45 seconds worth of the beginning of this interview, the video portion. You'll still be able to hear it. And do not panic because the rest of the interview will be in video and you'll be able to see Michael talking with Ed. And also, before we go right to this, join themajority.report.com to become a member, help the show keep going. If you like, especially if you like these Thursday shows, maybe you can give that in the feedback when you become a member. If you say, I'm becoming a member because of the Thursday shows at jointhemajority.report.com. All right, here is Michael. This is, again, from June 21st, 2018, with New Yorker writer Ed Caesar.
I'm Michael Brooks. Joining us now is Ed Caesar. He's a contributing writer at The New Yorker. Ed, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you have a new piece in the June 25th, 2018 issue. It's a fascinating piece. It has a lot of elements that interest me. South Africa, PR, spin. It's called The Reputation-Laundering Firm That Ruined Its Own Reputation. A PR company that worked with dictators and oligarchs deliberately inflamed racial tensions in South Africa and destroyed itself in the process. I guess before we get to South Africa, can you take us to the beginning? What was this firm? Who were they? Where did they come from, Bell Pottinger? What was the history, both of the firm itself, but also the kind of broader climate it came out of in the, London public relations and spin business?
Sure. So Bell Pottinger had been around for a while, a couple of decades at least, and like a number of PR firms, they did a mixture of work. So they did really vanilla, uninteresting stuff for like grocery chains and handbag brands. But they also had a division that was called geopolitical that did work in overseas territories, quite often for quite controversial figures. And that could include, in Bill Pottinger's case, working for the government of Sri Lanka after the Civil War, or working for an oligarch that needed their help, or working in the case that I covered in the magazine, for a rich family in South Africa that wanted to change the conversation nationwide in South Africa. So the general environment in London is that London is the place where if you have a lot of money or a lot of power, it is a place where you can come and have your reputation managed or laundered, in the more pejorative term, by very effective PR men. Publicists, for some reason, this industry is a particularly lively one in London. And it's partly because London's emergence as a financial center in the last couple of decades has been wild. I think, it really is the place where a lot of the world's financial activity takes place. And as it sits where it does, close to Europe, not too far from New York, sort of midway between America and the Far East, it's become this kind of nodal point in international, transnational wealth. And the PR industry has grown up in that environment. And there are a lot of firms who do similar types of work to Bell Pottinger. Bell Pottinger was different because its leader for a long time, Tim Bell, or Lord Bell as he was known, was so unrepentant about doing work for controversial figures. He loved the attention. And that's what gave it its reputation.
And so, so that across the board, these firms take on accounts of, in varying degrees, but taking on an account of an oligarch or a repressive regime or even an exploitive Western corporation, that is far from unusual. But the sort of appetite at which Tim Bell took on some of these causes and sort of enjoyed the controversy of those accounts was distinct. And also the other one you mentioned, which I think I just want to note for everybody, was also, I believe, in 2011, taking on the Bahraini royal family, literally in the midst of a very brutal crackdown that happened in the context of the political wave in the Middle East of 2011. And also the other thing to note is that certainly Bell personally and the firm in general is pretty Tory or Conservative Party aligned, and that makes some of the themes that they distorted and exploited in South Africa very ironic, because they essentially generated it was a right-wing firm that generated the right's dishonest representation of what a left-wing campaign would be on behalf of South African oligarchs. So that being said, who are the Gupta family? What was their connection with former President Jacob Zuma? And then how did they get in touch with Bell Pottinger?
Okay, well, I think that South Africa is still working out exactly what the Gupta's relationship with former President Jacob Zuma was. But in Précis, the Guptas were this family that had come from India and had been extremely successful in business. They had computer businesses and they had mining interests, they had newspapers, they'd developed this conglomerate of businesses. And they had become very close with Zuma in a way that struck many people as inappropriate, and then continued to strike people as corrupt. And the thing that they are accused of doing is of effectively running a shadow government in South Africa, whereby they were so entwined with the Zuma administration that the Gupta brothers had the power to offer ministerial posts in the South African government. There was one South African politician who claimed to have been offered a bribe of $44 million to take a certain ministerial post to further various interests of the Gupta brothers. And a term was coined for this behavior, which was called state capture. It was thought that the Guptas had captured the South African state. So Bell Pottinger came out to South Africa in the midst of some of these accusations being aired, and knowing, or they should have known, exactly who the Guptas were when they met them. And if they didn't know who they were, they had no excuse for not knowing who they were fairly soon after they first met them, because they were always in the news, and it was a huge story in South Africa. And Bell Pottinger was one of at least two London firms that bid for work with them, and was paid, they won the account, and they were paid a substantial retainer, $130,000 a month to do PR work. And some of that was just bog standard reputation management, and you can debate the rights or wrongs of that kind of work for controversial figures. I know plenty of people could defend it. But another part of the work was to advance this campaign that the Guptas wanted to promote, which was economic emancipation, they called it, which was essentially saying people of color in South Africa have been left out of the fruits of economic growth for too long. In other words, that after apartheid had ended, people of color were essentially no better off than they had been under apartheid. And they wanted a campaign to highlight this. And it was a profoundly cynical suggestion, because what they wanted to do as non-white businessmen was to kind of cast themselves as outsiders in this, this new environment. And they also wanted to cast their opponents as upholding this system that favored whites over non-white South Africans. And Bell Pottinger did that work. And there's no doubt that there is a legitimate campaign or conversation to be had around economic inclusion in South Africa. The facts speak for themselves. It is a profoundly unequal country, but the cynicism with which this campaign was deployed, and the people on whose behalf this campaign was employed, and the tactics that were involved in the deployment of the campaign were all pretty odious. And eventually Bell Pottinger's tactics were exposed, and they were pilloried.
I actually do want to get to unpacking the distinctions there, and the dynamics, because certainly this show, obviously, and I have a very, very left perspective, which is fascinating, because I could also see a certain weaponization of a very distorted identity politics as well. But before we get there, just be a little bit more even specific when you talk about what they were doing. They came up with specific phrases that members of Zuma's cabinet started using. They used also some of the same tactics that people are very interested in now with regards to Cambridge Analytica. Get a little bit more into the specifics of the campaign.
Sure. So, some of the ugliest stuff that they did was very low tech. It was published on Twitter and on blogs and so on, but it was essentially political cartoons that were, for instance, a political cartoon that was commissioned by Bell Pottinger, not under their name, under this entity called Vertsec, which was doing a lot of their work, this Twitter feed and blog site. And the cartoon showed a table groaning with food, at which various white business people were eating, while poor non-white South Africans ate the crumbs from the table. Like deeply racially inflammatory idea. And you're saying certain things about the people who are at the table, which may or may not be true. It struck many people that this campaign was totally poisoning what is a very fragile and delicate ecosystem in South Africa, in which these conversations need to be had, but in the right way, and it didn't seem helpful to anyone to have it in this way. They were also providing talking points for politicians about economic emancipation. They
call it white monopoly capital.
Right, that phrase came into prominence. So Bell Pottinger would deny having come up with the term, and I think that they're right in that. I think they certainly helped to popularize that term, white monopoly capital. Both them and the Gupta's own media empire helped to popularize that term. And white monopoly capital is this idea that, white-owned businesses and prominent white business people had seized the powerful business interests of the country for their own ends and had shut non-white South Africans out of it.
So what's interesting about it's just what's interesting about it here is definitely, and this is where we'll kind of pivot to South Africa more specifically, and I'll lay my red cards on the table, but there's a couple of dynamics at work. So one is that in my read of it, one is that the South African transition hinged on sort of, there was kind of three dynamics at work. One was that you had obviously this incredible achievement and very genuine policy of the ANC that the answer to apartheid and systemic oppression is full, broad, and inclusive democracy. And that really was not, that was not spin. That's a very genuine and serious part of the African National Congress tradition. Then there was the reality that under the transition, and a lot of people who have gone on to be critics of Zuma, but people on the left, like Ronnie Casrils, who I've had the pleasure of interviewing several times, said, look, in the mid-'90s, the macroeconomic rule book of the global financial system meant that as soon as we achieved political liberation, we cannot follow through on the things that we did need to do, of course, in a nonviolent and strategic manner. But in fact, there does need to be land reform. There does need to be mass redistribution along, not only racial, but certainly class lines. And of course, there's a massive overlap in South Africa. And then the other two things to kind of put on the table are that the ANC has sort of been boxed into a position where the social democratic, the labor reform, the tripartite communist sort of alliance has been marginalized in terms of delivering the types of real smart left economic policies that would help ensure not only justice, but also the rainbow democracy. And it's been a conflict between people like Thabo Mbeki and now Cyril Ramaphosa, who are, very centrist and very business friendly overall. And then a Zuma who adopted and diagnosed these problems, but in the most cynical manner possible, to forward pure kleptocratic capitalism by all accounts and state capture. And then the irony of Bell Pottinger as a London-based, right-leaning firm devising this campaign. But does it sort of strike home, though, that it's the cynicism of it does also show that there's all of these structural problems on the table that nobody is addressing, and it will inevitably be subsumed by those types of cynical advances without a genuine, social democratic strategy.
I saw a poll either today or yesterday saying that 67% of South Africans support land reform.
Right.
There is an appetite for this conversation.
Of course, yeah.
And what happened in this case was that Zuma was fantastically corrupt and inept in many ways, and his cronies, the Guptas, who were not interested in the greater good of South Africa, I don't believe. They were interested in profit. And, this argument has been deployed on behalf of people who are unworthy of it, in a sense.
Right, yep.
And and I think it matters who's making those arguments.
Yep.
I am not a political reporter, but I just, to me, narrative is incredibly interesting, and when certain narratives gain traction, why they're doing so. This phrase, white monopoly capital, was used by Zuma and the Guptas to smear people who were trying to do good and interesting things. So they would say of a politician who is considered an enemy of them, well, he's in the pocket of white monopoly capital.
Right.
Which is it's a racial slur.
They weren't doing a diagnosis of but of course somebody could come and say, obviously the next phase of South Africa's development means that the capital monopolies need to be broken up and there needs to be redistribution. And of course there is a racial component to that. Is totally different than the cynical, like you say, the cynical just sort of weaponizing and also using it to smear anybody who said anything about what they did. And that was that kind of ironic, weaponization of distorted identity politics.
Yeah.
If you took us back to London for a second, you said we kind of glossed over the other part of this story is just this ridiculous drama and very, very entertaining drama of these kind of, British, I guess, madmen, whatever we're going to call them. The firm gets into trouble through this account, and then it becomes basically this whole, just boardroom warfare. What's happening back at Bell Pottinger?
So what happened was there was a long-running feud, well before this account ever came to the firm, between the two people at the top of Bell Pottinger, Tim Bell, Lord Bell of Belgravia, this famous and fantastically colourful figure in British public relations, and a much younger man who had a greater stake in the business called James Henderson. And Henderson wanted Bell out of the company because he thought he was a threat to the company, and they clashed just in simple personality terms from the moment they started working together. And Bell didn't want to go. And eventually Henderson won that mini battle in the summer of 2016. And according to the very, very many people who spoke to me for the piece and documents I've seen and a gathering of evidence, Bell made it his business to destroy what was left of Bell Pottinger. And he used the details of this South African account, which he himself had helped to win and run, as the explosion that he needed to put under the rest of the company that still bore his name. And in the final scene, or the penultimate scene of the story, he sits down with a former partner and very explicitly says, "I am taking my revenge." It's one of the most unusual, dramatic.
It's not particularly subtle.
Stories. It's not particularly subtle, but it's incredibly chilling.
Right.
I mean, that level of hatred. So that's the other part of this story. And what's interesting for me as someone who writes long, I write these long pieces for the New Yorker, and it's so interesting to see when these feuds start to impact beyond the walls of a company. This feud between these two rich white businessmen, had an effect on an entire nation, 10,000 miles away. And it's kind of unforgivable, really, that this spilled over in that way.
And now there's another firm that's sort of arisen out of this as well.
Right.
Where, there's that, and then there's also that some of this potentially spilled over into Cambridge Analytica. Could you touch on those two things as well?
Sure. Yeah. So there was the area of Bell Pottinger that did a lot of this geopolitical work was called Bell Pottinger Geopolitical, and a former partner there for very many years was someone called Mark Turnbull, who was, in fact, one of the people who was caught on camera recently bragging about Cambridge Analytica's work on foreign elections. And, you know, he had worked in Iraq and South Africa for Bell Pottinger before he went to Cambridge Analytica. And it's just interesting. It is noteworthy to see how the tactics are kind of continued from one place to another. And then the other part of the story is that a group, you know, Tim Bell's faction from Bell Pottinger, when they were kicked out, went and started their own organization called Sans Frontières, which is, if you think deeply about it, it's a kind of an outrageous name for
outrageous. For a Africa-focused, kind of London-based PR firm, yes.
Well, they may not call themselves Africa-focused.
But they have a lot of Africa clients.
They're definitely international. Yeah, international, for sure.
They, yeah. So.
I mean, it was the previous name for Bell Pottinger Geopolitical, and they would argue that, you know, they've got every right to use the phrase, but I know that Médecins Sans Frontières were not particularly happy about them having the name back.
Well, they have every right, and we have every right to be a bit disgusted if we choose to be. Is there a broader? I mean, I guess, you know, it's sort of like these examples. You can always find the most flashy example, and certainly someone like Tim Bell makes, you know, I mean, it's part of what makes your story, I mean, is so well written and engrossing and fascinating. And there was a lot of, you know, the firm was censured by, you know, a sort of PR group association and so on. But, yeah. I mean, how much do they really, I mean, they might stand out. There's some funny lines from other PR firms about, oh, well, that's a Bell Pottinger client. But more broadly, and particularly in the UK, I mean, Tony Blair even was doing essentially some, you know, comm services for Kazakhstan. How much of this is just, and in Washington, there's more strictures on lobbying, but certainly people foreign lobby for almost any government on the planet. Short of North Korea, that might actually change in the next couple of years if things go.
It might change.
Yeah,
I'm sure. I'm sure some people are thinking up their bids.
Yeah, I have no doubt. So, what's the big? Is there a bigger picture here in terms of what governs this industry and how we think about it?
Well, I think nothing governs it.
Right.
But you know, as long as there are people with money and power, they're going to want their reputations to be as good as they can possibly be.
Right.
You know, and that's why it's going to be a perennially interesting story to me, that people can come to see a nice man who went to a good school in London, and they go into a very respectable-looking office, and they tell, well, we can make certain things go away for you, we can make certain issues move down the agenda, we can possibly get you a couple of pieces in the newspapers here and there. You know, we can guide you to a softer, nicer place than the one you're in now. That's not going to change. There's no way you could regulate it, I don't think. It will just shift shape. And you know, there was a moment in which, when I was reporting this story, when one of my sources, sent me this quotation from C.S. Lewis. And I sort of puzzled over it for a while. And it's a quotation about evil. And he said, I live in the managerial age, in a world of admin. And the greatest evil is not now done in those sordid dens of crimes that Dickens loved to paint. And it goes on to say, it is conceived and ordered in clean, carpeted, warmed, and well-lighted offices by quiet men with white collars and cut fingernails and smooth-shaven cheeks who do not need to raise their voices. And I thought a lot about that, which is it's a really, really good idea that there is something profoundly evil about some of the things that I uncovered in this piece. You know, there was a moment at which Bell Pottinger are advising the Bahraini Economic Development Board, but they do some extra work for the Bahraini government. And the Arab Spring happens.
Yep.
But Bell Pottinger are asked to prepare a list of the most influential Bahraini dissidents for their client, which they do.
Yep.
And, Bahrain was torturing and killing dissidents at that time. And it's hard to get rid of the feeling that this might be the most profoundly evil thing you could ever imagine a PR doing. It's essentially like pointing the finger at people you need to target.
Yep.
I just don't see how it stops. And I'm not here to tell anyone how to make it stop. I just, my job is to shine a light in the dark places.
And you did it incredibly well. I really recommend, obviously we have a link to the piece on the homepage, and everybody should read the piece. Oh, it's really my pleasure. Thank you for doing this. The Reputation-Laundering Firm That Ruined Its Own Reputation by Ed Caesar. It's in the, I believe, the current issue of the New Yorker, the June 25th issue of the New Yorker.
That's it.
Ed, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, folks. Great interview. I think kind of reminds us why we spend so much time fighting against lies, because there's a lot of paid liars in the discourse. The concept of I think Matt Binder will join us here. A Tory-led firm coming up with the concept of white monopoly capital to muddy the waters of South African racial and sort of land redistribution politics. Pretty gross stuff. And guess what? Of course it's happening right now. Mm-hmm. Of course there's American PR firms doing this. I mean, McKinsey has clients over there. I mean, I'm sure they probably occasionally, I think there was a story about that. I just don't want to get too big into the details because I don't remember it. But yeah, this is the battlefield we're playing in. So yeah, don't tolerate people who have a track record of lying. Hey, Matt. Oh, we do not have any mic from Matt, even though his mic looks activated. So no signal. I think, let's see here.
Give us a sign.
Still no, it looks unmuted. It appears unmuted in the, appears a Binder. I think this is probably related to his audio settings because Matt Binder, if all goes according to plan, will be doing the call-in system in the fun half. But yeah, before we get, he tries to figure that out, I do want to say jointhemajorityreport.com. We do not take clients of dictators and oligarchs. I don't think, as far as I know, unless Brendan has some announcements he wants to make. So jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, there you go. Hey,
yeah.
Man. How's it going?
There we go. I spend a week away and I forget the settings that I need to have set up. But the alpha male is back.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the last time I bid my possible farewell, but Sam, always the forward thinker and thinking ahead, texted me yesterday afternoon, I should say, and said, "You all ready for tomorrow?" And I was like, what?
That's how it goes around here. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy that we're still doing this. I've had a good time with it so far. I think everyone's been really nice and supportive and, patient with us when we have snafus. And I hope that magnanimous spirit continues.
Absolutely.
We definitely have to earn it. So let's do some plugs. Speaking of things
that'll do it.
Haven't really earned. Tuesday night, TMBS, we had Malika Jabali on. She was in Kenosha when Rittenhouse murdered two people. So it's working its way through the courts. And I'm not relying on the courts or hopeful about that case. I don't know. Binder, do you know about that? What do you expect about Rittenhouse? Have you been following that?
I mean, I was going to talk more in the second half if we have time, but I think personally, I think he murdered two people, and there's some there's some, gray area, I guess, in certain, depending on the law. But I do think the self-defense defense from what they're going to argue could potentially work. It probably, how things work generally, I think it probably will. Wisconsin isn't a stand your ground state. So they're going to have to work a little bit harder. But yeah, it all depends on the jury, really. It's really hard to speculate on that one. I would argue I'm not a lawyer, but if I was the prosecutor, I would argue that the very, and there's video that shows that him being there with his gun was the agitation. It was agitating protesters. Absolutely. And it heightened their, how they felt. And that's, if he didn't have a gun, this wouldn't have ever happened. They would have never even approached him.
The Daily Caller guy caught him on video. Somebody saying, "You're threatening us with your gun." I mean, and then there was also a report in the USA Today. He among the militia guys. He was more agitative than usual, and people noted him for that prior to him murdering people.
Right. There's a lot of video. There's a lot. Well, we can talk about more in the second half, but there's a lot of video out there that shows that he was going around inserting himself in the protests where the other militia people were sort of just hanging around this business they were supposedly guarding. And he was really among the protesters, going around asking them, anyone need medical attention? Like, he can say he was trying to help people, but no one wants medical attention from the group that's there to oppose them. I mean, no one wants his help. I mean, it was clearly to agitate.
There's Antifa medics all around. They don't get a pass because there's asking people like from the right. They don't get a pass. Like, I guess that's a medic Antifa guy. That's one that I'm okay with, right? Like,
right?
It was clearly just a cover, to the point where, like in the Daily Caller video I mentioned, like he goes up to these guys, said, "First aid" or whatever, and the guy's like, "First aid? You were just telling me to get out of the car with your gun. What are you talking about, first aid?"
Right. My question is, I think the first person he shot will be the one that sort of determines the rest of it, unfortunately. And I think that's the one where he probably has the best case for self-defense, because there was a confrontation. They were like, it wasn't the guy he shot was confronting him. He was unarmed. So the question is going to be, what is the appropriate use of force? I think that's going to be the argument there. Mm-hmm. But if self-defense is there, then the question is, do the two people who saw that he just shot someone and see someone with a gun walking around, do they then have, anyone else would be able to see, someone just shot someone, I'm going to take them down, and they'd be heralded as a hero.
Exactly. That's going to be shooter. We've been told to rush the shooter.
Right. So that's I think that's where I think it's going to be an interesting case. And I wish it wasn't going to be an interesting case, because it should be a pretty clear case of someone literally going there with the intent to at least hurt someone, and he ended up killing two people.
Yeah.
But the people who were able to get in between him and everybody else, the people who rushed to disarm him, those people are heroes. Mm-hmm. And they should be remembered much more so than he should. And it bothers me that everybody knows this Rittenhouse guy's name, but not theirs.
Yeah.
The second guy, the third overall guy he shot, the one guy who was armed and was approaching him with a handgun, he survived. He is alive. Mm-hmm. And the right has been smeared. Well, the right's been smearing all three of them.
Yeah. On that guy, I've been mentioning this for a while, but there's this USA Today article that it's just such a this is vital article to read on this. And it goes into, the guy who had the gun that was shot, like that's a normal thing for medics to have is handguns. He wasn't but like he pulled it out after there had been shooting happening. Like that's the whole point. You bring a handgun to those things, right?
And the thing is too, there's video. I mean, I've poured over this. I was going to use it in the plug, so I won't say it yet. There's something I have to promote to where I wrote about this, but there is lots of still photos and video that show that the medic with the handgun approaches Rittenhouse behind the guy with the skateboard. The guy with the skateboard gets shot and stumbles off and falls and dies at the scene. And in that moment where this guy with the skateboard stumbles off, the guy with the medic with the handgun, I believe his last name is very hard to pronounce. It's something like Grazenkrautz. Mm-hmm. He hesitates. He puts his hands in the air and holds the gun up. And I don't know if he was worried about his own life or he just wasn't sure if he could actually end up pulling the trigger, but he hesitated. So he really didn't want to do whatever he felt like he had to do. So I think that might be something prosecutors could use, the idea that even when they tried to stop this guy, they didn't want to hurt anyone, even the guy who they just saw shoot someone else.
Yeah, it was Gage Grosskreutz, I think. And
right.
Yeah, he's a medic. And that, it is disgusting that they're painting him as some kind of like agitator. And that's what Rittenhouse was.
Right.
This guy was actually there as a medic. But yeah, I would just recommend this USA Today, one of the best pieces by Gina Barton. That's the shooter. Witnesses describe the night Kyle Rittenhouse opened fire in Kenosha. I'll clip that actually. So if you want to plug what you have to plug, I'll include that in the clip here too, Binder, because I feel like
okay.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. So yeah, I launched a newsletter. It's a free newsletter called you can find it at misinfo.com. It just launched this week. And the first article is me breaking down all the most common right-wing, and some of them not so common. Some of them are a little bit, you have to look a little bit harder for, but they're out there. The most common right-wing talking points about the shooting. And I debunk a lot of them because a lot of it's based on misinformation. And a lot of the right talking points obviously are to defend Kyle Rittenhouse for shooting people and to smear the people who he shot. And I broke it down in there. And on the podcast, on my show, youtube.com/Matt Binder tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And later on as a podcast at doomedpod.com, I will break down that piece and talk about these points of misinformation and debunk them. So you could go there on YouTube, check out the podcast, or read the newsletter at misinfo.com. And the live stuff will happen tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Cool. And let me just wrap up the TMBS plug now that we've got that little discrete segment in the middle of it. We also had an activist from No Olympics, Albert Corrado, who lost his sister to police violence also when they tried to cover it up. So he tells Alicia Brooks about that. So patreon.com/TMBS. Check that out. Jamie?
This week on the Antifada, we have a combo episode. First, Sean and I break down some of the news out of Los Angeles, Kenosha, and Portland, and have a discussion on political violence and what that means and what it should mean and how we should approach it as communists who don't want to be LARPers. We talk a little bit about revolutionary organization versus spontaneity, all that good stuff. And then in the second half, I speak with 3 worker organizers who used to work at No Evil Foods, which is a vegan food company with radical branding. But when their workers tried to form a union, I feel like David Feldman should be here for this. They used the same old union busting activities as any company would. So we talk a little bit about that, get the word out about No Evil Foods. I myself have not been buying their fake meat since this interview went up. Since I found out about it. And that's about it. Patreon.com/TheAntifada. Oh, also, still good, our 2-parter on the Black radical tradition from last week. If you haven't listened to it yet, I highly recommend it because Black liberation is so much at the forefront of the public conversation these days. And I think very key to the liberation of everyone and the revolutionary overthrow of capitalism, especially in this country. So, no big deal. Patreon.com/TheAntifada. Check it out.
All right, folks. And we will see you in the fun half.
You are in for it. All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back. back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back, 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 boy, back. And the alpha males are back, 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 back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back, back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back, 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 back.
Homo says what?
The alpha males are back, 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 back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back, back, back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
Psych. Fuck 'em. Fuck 'em.
Homo says what?
What? Homo
says what?
A hell of a lot of bang. A hell of a lot of bang. A hell of a lot of bang. Hell of a lot of bang. A hell of a lot of bang. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black African. And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black. Alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black.
Come on! Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total
Pussy.
Oh, gosh, it's so much fun.
We're back. So, how was? I know you guys probably done this already, but how was your guys' week? Your vacation?
Mine was good. I broke some of the rules and went back to an outbreak state, which is North Dakota, to visit my family. Me and my girlfriend went, so now we're quarantining here.
Well, as long as you came back and are quarantining, I think you're not breaking the rules technically.
They have the some
and
states,
Matt's a contact tracer.
Well, some states have the contact tracing, some states don't. North Dakota, hasn't gotten around to it, despite, it hasn't really had much of coronavirus in North Dakota, except very recently there's been a spike because of all the motorcyclists in Sturgis have basically infected the rest of the country. 61% of counties in America have had somebody that was at the Sturgis rally.
Oh, is that the one where Smash Mouth played?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Hey now,
dying of COVID for Smash Mouth is not something I would want to do, but opinions differ.
And so prior to that, there was really no COVID in North Dakota, or it was just minuscule, and now it's starting to see a rise. But I feel like I'm safe. Haven't had any symptoms. Doing good. But I gotta say I miss being the great outdoors. I went out to the Badlands.
Cool.
Man, saw buffalo. Actually saw two of them, but one was at a major distance away. Saw a whole bunch of prairie dogs. If people haven't saw a prairie dog town before, pretty crazy things. Just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of prairie dogs just running around a little prairie.
Aww.
So I had fun. That's the more of the stories I had fun. Then I got on a pontoon. I'll continue. I went out on a pontoon on the Missouri River. That was also fun. I saw a lot of the MAGA fleet out on that.
Did you? That
river.
must have been Did you have
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a video taking device with you, a phone or something?
I did, but I didn't video any of the MAGA flagged ones. But suffice to say, MAGA and Blue Lives Matter flags are all over the Missouri River. That really is. We should just talk about that. I did see some Trump stuff around the normal residential areas, but like not a whole lot. And it's not. I also say it's not in like trailer parks, at least in my hometown. Aren't there Trump heavy places? I think probably because you might have like more Native American neighbors in those places than you are in some of the more residential areas or upper middle class residential areas. So I didn't see a whole lot of Trump stuff until I got onto the river, and you're surrounded by all the pontoon folks with, their big houses and nice pontoons and giant MAGA flags. And there had been an intercoastal waterways Trump flotilla 2 weeks prior to that, and everybody was still amped for that. And that really is his base. We joke about the RV and like the camper
guys who own a ski-doo dealership.
If you can throw a lot of money at a toy as an adult like that, then Trump is your guy, actually.
Look, historically, the social base for fascism is the petty bourgeoisie. And I'm not saying that no poor people vote for Trump. Obviously, we have the stats on that. But statistically speaking, if you're poor, you're more likely to not vote than you are to vote for either party. And the petty bourgeoisie, there's this like 30% of the population that is always going to be reactionary, and we really need to watch out for them. Yeah. I saw the boats too, by the way.
Yeah.
If you own a boat, I feel like you also usually care a lot about healthcare coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, which we all know Trump is the number one guy for all that. He says it all the time. That's his thing.
Yeah. I saw the boats for Trump. I saw the big, beautiful boaters, and on Block Island.
Where did you see?
On Block Island, it's off the coast of Rhode Island, and a lot of rich white people have boats there, so makes sense. There was a storm one night. I was like, ooh, is one gonna sink? Like, oh, sorry, detective, I don't know anything about that. But then we were at a bar tripping on some mushy boys and watching the storm roll in, and we saw the guys come in off the boats, and at first we were like, oh, they look pretty young, like maybe they just work on the boats. And then I was like, no, these are the boaters for Trump, and they're like drunk and ready to fight someone about it. And the vibe was all off in that place, and we had to get out, and then we just walked around in a rainstorm along the jetty. It was really nice.
Yeah, I had a very weird sort of like thing where the pontoon, the rules of the sea in the Missouri River, and I'm assuming this is the case for most rivers, is if you're pontoon guys, you wave at each other. But it's like, I don't want to wave. If you're flying like a big like MAGA Blue Lives Matter thing, I'm not waving that shit.
No, I'm shooting a cannonball onto your boat from mine.
Well, you wouldn't want to do that because you'd be quickly surrounded by a whole
bunch. Are you in a pirate ship? Are you in a pirate ship, by the way? I mean, cannonball.
In this scenario, I am the leader of the Antifa Pirates.
Yeah.
Please say yes.
Well, be careful. I heard Rand Paul has filed to look into your sailing records, your complete receipt history. He's on to you, and all of Antifa LLC.
We've graduated.
Come and get him. I've shredded all those documents already.
Yeah, we've graduated from like walking around planes with backpacks. Now we got frigates with cannons and big guns that we're taking.
You guys?
Go on.
You got to fight Armada with Armada. That's all I'm saying.
Did you guys talk about the people on the planes already this week?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
We got some new stuff. Maybe this is the segue to talk about that.
Go for it.
Let's. All right. So I guess we should. Should we also play the Trump clip again? I mean, I feel like it sort of connects to what Bill Barr says, right? Because he claims something that, I mean, all you have to do is listen to the Trump clip to immediately know that he is not correct in what he said, what he's saying. Brendan, do we have the original Trump clip?
Which one? The original one with Laura Ingraham, or the one yesterday where he's asked about it and he says he'll get you the person who told him the story?
Well, I mean, I think both of them do, but I think the second one actually very specifically gets to it. So let's play this clip from Trump first, because I want you to pay attention to this more recent clip from Bill Barr about the guys in all black, or girls, there could be Antifa members who are male and female, excuse me, on the planes in all black, that this conspiracy that Trump is spreading. Let's listen to the Trump clip from yesterday first before we talk about this more recent Bill Barr clip. There's a reason, by the way. I want you to hear this one first.
Give me a minute.
Sure. I will give you a minute, Brendan. Why not? And Matt could just clip this small section out and go directly to the clip right after when he makes the YouTube video. No, but have you guys also talked about where the conspiracy theory comes from?
Well, I think I saw is it Devin Nunes.
It goes back even further.
It comes from the Patriot Prayer guy, right?
It goes back even further. A random guy on Facebook during the whole early June period when all those
oh yeah, we showed that the Patriot Prayer guy.
It's not that.
Try and keep up, guy. Brendan.
No, there's another guy on Facebook, not a video or anything, where he just literally posted this in early June during the height of the BLM protests, when all the suburban Facebook groups were all like, "Oh no, BLM's coming to break down our doors and steal our children."
Yeah, that's who we were referring to.
Oh, that's the guy, right? He's not a Patriot Prayer guy.
Is he? Yeah, he is. Yeah, we've showed him opening prayer at a 2019 Patriot Prayer rally.
Yep. He's a Patriot Prayer.
Which as the New York Times tells us, is a right-wing group devoted to religious Christianity and small government.
Here's that clip.
Is that not clip. It? Is that not the whole thing that they do?
Weird that the New York Times would underemphasize fascism. Go on, Brendan. You want to play that clip?
And Biden is, I don't even like to mention Biden because he's not controlling anything.
Who do you think is pulling Biden's strings? Is it former Obama
people
officials?
That you've never heard of, people that are in the dark shadows, people that
what does that mean? That sounds like conspiracy theory. Dark shadows.
No,
what is
people that you haven't heard of. They're people that are on the streets. They're people that are controlling the streets. We had somebody get on a plane from a certain city this weekend, and in the plane it was almost completely loaded with thugs wearing these dark uniforms, black uniforms with gear and this and that. They're on a plane.
Where's
I'll tell you sometime, but it's under investigation right now. But they came from a certain city, and this person was coming to the Republican National Convention. And there were like 7 people on the plane like this person, and then a lot of people were on the plane to do big damage. They were coming
planning for Washington.
Yeah, this is all happening.
But the money is coming from somewhere.
Money is coming
how can it be tracked?
From some very stupid rich people that have no idea that if their thing ever succeeded, which it won't, they will be thrown to the wolves like you've never seen before.
All right.
I love telling a newswoman nobody you've ever heard of, like multiple times, so who's responsible? Oh yeah, you wouldn't be familiar even if I'd actually said them by name.
Yeah,
right.
Also, I'm pretty sure Laura Ingraham does know Patriot Prayer, probably very intimately.
Right.
So don't you mansplain fascism to a fascist Barbie? Come on.
I hate to do this, but I had to look it up because I was pretty sure this guy's not a Patriot Prayer guy. He's just a random guy who calls himself a patriot. But
our bad.
I had to defend my right wing knowledge.
He is a patriot who leads people in prayer, but he's not.
He prayed with Patriot Prayer.
Literally, there's a bunch of posts on his Facebook page about Patriots Day, and him leading a prayer on Patriots Day. That's probably where that came from. But The second video, which I thought you were going to play, Brendan, was him talking to a guy outside. Do you still have that one?
Yep, I'm going to pull that one up.
All right, cool.
Now.
Tell us more about this plot that you were referring to on Fox News last night.
Which?
This plot of people gathering on a plane in gear.
Yeah, I could tell you that I could probably refer you to the person and they could do it. I'd like to ask that person if it was okay, but a person was on a plane, said that there were about 6 people like that person, more or less. And what happened is the entire plane filled up with the looters, the anarchists, the rioters, people that obviously were looking for trouble. and the person felt very uncomfortable on the plane. This would be a person you know, so I will see whether or not I can get that person. I'll let them know, and I'll see whether or not I can get that person to speak to you. But this was a first-hand account of a plane going from Washington to wherever, and I'll see if I can get that information for you. Maybe they'll speak to you, maybe they won't.
Okay, now, Brendan, now everyone keep in mind what you just heard there. Now, Brendan, play that Bill Barr clip of him talking about these people in all black, Antifa members boarding these airplanes. Remember what Trump said. Remember specifically everything he was able to recall.
Fighting is.
In an interview,
federal offense.
In an interview this week, the president claimed that he heard about a plane, in his words, loaded with thugs wearing dark uniforms from a certain city that was headed to the Republican National Convention here in Washington, in his words, to do big damage. He didn't offer any specifics. He later, the next day, changed the story. The plane wasn't coming to Washington, was leaving Washington. Have you asked the FBI to investigate this?
I don't have to ask the FBI because we received numerous reports of individuals coming from Portland, Washington, Seattle, and several other cities to come into Washington for the specific purpose of causing a riot.
Were they wearing black uniforms and were they loaded, if you will?
There were many on planes. We've received multiple reports on this topic.
And so what the president was talking about was information that you provided the president?
I don't know what the president was specifically
It's widely reported
to.
on Facebook there was some conspiracy that was reported weeks ago about this sort of thing.
I don't know what the president was referring to, but I will say that we are trying to follow these things, and we received numerous reports of people coming from other cities into Washington, as we received many reports of people going into Kenosha from various states.
But you're saying you don't know specifically what the president was referring to?
No, I don't know what the president was referring to.
When he spoke about this?
He seems to be talking in general terms. I don't know what he's referring to.
All right, let's talk a little bit about
the
president.
Okay. I don't know if you guys can recall the video that we just played for you of President Trump all of, 2 minutes ago, not even a minute ago. Didn't sound like general basic terms to me. He was recalling a very specific incident with a very specific location and a very specific, you can't get any more specific than what the president was saying.
A specific person he needed to ask if he could relay the information.
Right. I mean, the idea that, and this has been something that this is something that's been used to attack protesters for as long as there's been protests in this country, the outside agitator. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you guys have talked about it on this show a lot. I've talked about it on my show a lot. It really came into this year with the George Floyd, the protest in the wake of George Floyd's killing. And the idea that people from all over the country are working together in California and Seattle and Portland and New York and all flying together to one protest spot to cause havoc. I mean, when you look at the arrest records that the police in these cities put out, this is often not the case. Often it is majority people from within the state, usually within the city, but definitely within the state, within the same metropolitan area. These are people who may not live in Kenosha, but maybe they work in Kenosha. Maybe people might not live in Washington, D.C., but maybe they commute the 20 minutes every day to Washington, D.C. Those people have ties to that community. They're not an outside agitator. It's just ridiculous. And of course, if you see someone in California get arrested in Wisconsin or something, you again don't really know the details there. Are they currently living in California, but their family lives in Wisconsin? And because of the whole pandemic, they're currently with their family, but their legal residence is still in California? We don't know. Like, there's tons of different things that come into play here that really just rip the whole outside agitator trope to shreds.
Also, it's like laudable if, for instance, Black Lives Matter activists in Minneapolis drive down the road in the interstate to Kenosha to help in that protest, just because, like, that's the exact same struggle. Like, these Black Lives Matter is not specific Black Lives Matter for this community. It's this entire country. Mm-hmm. So of course there's going to be certain activists that are going to be going to back up their people who are being, herded between cops and militia members. And like, this is just common sense. And he's trying to he's trying to criminalize that.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. Like Philando
Yeah.
Castile's girlfriend was one of the people that were protesting in Kenosha. She's allowed to do that. It's great that she's there. Everybody, and that goes for every single Black Lives Matter activist that is going to these protests, because this is going to be an ongoing thing, particularly in the upper Midwest.
Yeah.
Right. And while that's a thing, though, I also want to stress that, and I wish it was more of a thing, but it's not even that big of a thing, unfortunately, for them to even be able to turn that into an outside agitator thing. We're literally talking about probably a dozen people at each protest. I don't know what else to like.
But if people are doing that, it's a good thing, because activists everywhere need to be talking to each other. If there are some activists who have time off from work, or maybe they don't have a job right now and they're able to do that, devote more time to it than others, and they have experience and they can help people get things going in various places, that's a good thing, folks. And I'm sorry to keep harping on this. I feel like I bring it up every time, but this outside agitators trope is a very old, very racist trope, going back to the days of the slave uprisings, going back to the Haitian Revolution, that says, oh, well, Black people are naturally servile and they're fine with being second-class citizens. And the only reason why they could possibly get angry enough to revolt is if there are white leftists, often Jews, putting ideas in their heads and getting them all riled up. And I think it's pretty obvious to everyone how racist a trope that is. Like the idea that a Black person, a working class Black person in this country, couldn't possibly be angry enough to burn a cop car without some like white anarchist grad student telling them to do it is bullshit.
Right. And I want to also point out here, there's one little addendum here, specifically to the Kenosha one, because I'm actually working on a piece about it. But Kenosha police put out a press release where they basically said that something like more than like something like 75% of the people they arrested in Kenosha this past week, the last week when the protest started there, were from out of town. And I looked into this, and it's not entirely true. They're from out of the city, perhaps, but not from out of the metropolitan area or the state. But in that number that they put out of these outside agitators they arrested, I just want to point out that Kyle Rittenhouse is not included, of course, because even though there should be no better example of an outside agitator than him, because of course, he fled the state and went back to Illinois where he lives, and he was arrested there. So it's just amazing how, like, in that, even when they try to push this sort of trope, an actual outside agitator can't even technically be counted because he fled the state and wasn't arrested by the Kenosha police.
Yeah, and I also want to emphasize the big lie nature of the messaging we're hearing about how all these cities are war zones. And no doubt that political street violence is scary, but I also want to bring up this tweet from a Portland-based journalist, Joe Douglas, or former journalist. But he points out it's worth noting that the articles I posted above use FBI crime data from 2018 last year. 2018 was the most violent year in Portland in at least a decade. There are many protests and brawls in Portland in 2018 between Antifa and right-wingers, but even with that relatively high violence rate, as noted, Portland still didn't place on the 50 most dangerous places in cities in the U.S. ranked by violent crimes per 100,000 people. We don't know 2020 stats until fall 2021, but looking at crimes demonstrators are accused of, mostly misdemeanors like failing to comply, graffiti, vandalism, assaults, and possibly one homicide, it's likely Portland will remain one of the least violent major cities in the U.S. Preliminary data shows this year has so far seen an increase in violent crime nationwide, not just Portland. And obviously, we're going through a pandemic depression. I mean, not just the political stuff going on right now. Yeah, in Portland, for instance, the police department didn't see any homicides around protests in July, a department spokeswoman said. Through June, its crime maps show all its homicides happened east and south of the city center, away from protesters. So all of these, anybody in media who's emphasizing how dangerous this is, and we need to get DHS or whatever federal troop agency in there to shut this down, it's spreading an extremely dangerous lie about the state of these cities.
Right. Did you guys cover Giuliani at the RNC at all? I know you were off last week, but did you guys talk about that?
But I did see the point where, was this about his the murder rate?
Yeah. So, quick plug. I did 4 episodes every night of the RNC last week. You should check them out at doompod.com or youtube.com/MattBinder. And so Giuliani, to me, one of the most startling speeches because it's so ridiculous. He goes out there and he starts talking about how New York City is crime rating and crime is rising and it's got more crime than ever before. And, everything is terrible in New York City right now. You want to leave. People are packing their bags and leaving New York. And of course, this is, former New York City Mayor Giuliani. So he has a record of his own to look up. So I went and I looked, and there are crime stats put out by the NYPD. Now, this chart that I shared online is from factcheck.org, but they used the stats from the NYPD. I double checked and made sure it was accurate and it matched up. The NYPD themselves have these stats out, and New York, literally under Bill de Blasio, since these stats have been archived and kept, crime has never been lower in this city. Now, they don't have full stats yet for this year. But as of July of this year, from January and July this year, crime has been up from the previous year, 2019. Obviously, pandemic. But if Bill de Blasio wanted to hit Mayor Giuliani's best year when it comes to crime rates, low crime rates, there would have to be, I believe it's something like 400 more crimes, which is more than double there's been this year, until, by December, by January of next year. So while de Blasio's second to last year in office will be higher than the previous, it's still nowhere near Rudy Giuliani's best year. So this whole idea that, we're living under the most crime-ridden New York there's ever been, just ridiculous. I mean, I have walked through the streets of New York and still have never felt safer. I mean, New York is ridiculously safe right now, and anyone who lives here can attest to that.
Mm-hmm. Also, small correction, it's pronounced DeBunglio.
Yeah. I mean, I said it too. I when I heard Giuliani say this, I hate that I have to defend Bill de Blasio, but I can't let, credit where credit is due in terms of, I'm not gonna make it I'm not gonna lie go by just to hit the guy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
I don't think you can credit him with that, but continue.
I appreciate Giuliani being so dumb there, because that talking point where it's like, because people, when I went home, people asked me like, "What's it like in New York?" Because everyone assumes you have to like dodge muggers. It's like I think they think it's like. Oh gosh, what's the Macaulay Culkin movie?
Home Alone.
Home Alone. Yeah, I think that their idea of New York is like Home Alone.
Home Alone 2, right.
Yeah.
That was definitely my parents' idea of New York when I moved here. They're like, "Don't ride the subway at night."
Yeah, but being able to say to those people like, "Yeah, you know what Giuliani?" Because a lot of those like they might have watched RNC. Like, look, what Giuliani said about the crime rate, it has gone up recently, but it's also not nearly at where it was in Giuliani's last year.
Right.
Yeah, we're also in a world historical economic crisis.
Yeah, people are actually pretty well behaved for all things considered.
It is stunning. Yes, I've noticed. It's hopefully, we'll see how long that lasts based on what happens.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the government in every capacity, federal, state, local, really aren't doing what they need to do to step up and help people, especially in the face of mass evictions.
We should do that eviction video, actually. Maybe.
Yeah. Let's get to that, Brendan. You need a second to cue that up?
Yeah, this one's on today's packet.
Yeah,
cool. Let's do it.
Hello? Constable, need to come to the door.
From one Houston home to the next.
Hello, Constable.
Deputy Benny Gant with the Harris County Constable's Office executes judge's orders to evict.
Hello, Constable.
We ain't got nowhere to go.
Israel Rodriguez is the tenant at this apartment, but he's not alone. 20-month-old Israel, his brother, 4-year-old Fabian, and their mother are some of the estimated 40 million Americans facing eviction in the downward spiral of the COVID economy.
They didn't rush us, but they were like, get everything you need.
Rodriguez admits he hasn't been paying rent, behind thousands of dollars.
It's my fault in the eviction. It was a lot going on during the corona. When it hit, I lost my job. So it took me like a month to get another job. This is my check, but I ain't making it with $300. It's literally $300.
Their stroller now carries their possessions.
It's mainly the kids' clothes because me and her just wear the same clothes almost every day. Make sure we got, toilet paper and a little bit of snacks for the kids.
What are you going to do with all of your stuff?
That's trash. They can throw it in the trash because we don't have a car, we don't have help, we don't have nobody that can come, help us out right now. Nobody. We got ourselves, me and the kids and her, that's it.
How does you as law enforcement feel about seeing that family have to go?
Oh, it's a tough situation. I've got 6 kids, 6 children. And, when the kids see the mom and dad in desperate situations, it's tough. That's clear.
Deputy Gant, an officer for 35 years, is just starting his day. 8 evictions are on his list.
A co-defendant is here, 2 of them.
At each stop, people behind on rent are ordered to leave. Possessions pulled out.
Where are you guys going to go now?
We gotta go to the hotel.
You can go to a hotel?
As Deputy Gant works through his list, we get word that 200 eviction orders have come through the Harris County courts for this week. That's double what they normally saw for an entire month before COVID.
200 on Monday. What does that...
Well, that's a lot, yeah.
What does that say to you?
Well, what that means is that they're ready to start having people removed from properties.
It is a backlog, but it's also just one precinct in one of America's hardest hit cities in evictions. The job takes its toll.
I don't really want to put her out here, but I have to under this judge's order.
At this apartment, the tenant is an elderly woman who can no longer afford the rent. The landlord's mover, Francisco Munoz, works, though he doesn't want to.
I have a family, I have a sister, I have my mom, and we never know. Maybe today is her, tomorrow's me,
Midway through the eviction, Deputy Gant decides it's too dangerous to evict her in the Houston summer heat.
I'm not going to put her out here.
So there's some discretion.
And will call social services instead.
You're going to stay today, but tomorrow you're leaving.
A one-day reprieve with an uncertain tomorrow.
You have a situation where people aren't working, they don't have the money, and they're desperate.
Kyung Lan.
So there is discretion.
Right. He could have done that for every single person he put out.
Every single one.
Right.
Sorry,
Right.
I don't have any quips about this. I'm just really fucking sad and angry that once again, human beings, human lives, these families, these individuals are being treated as less important than private property and profit. We have a deeply diseased system and a deeply diseased ruling class. And the only way this is going to change is if people band together and fight back. Like we've been seeing all over the country, housing rights groups forming a hard picket around buildings and keeping people from being evicted and staying there with them until the cops leave. And that is something that we can do.
Yep.
But we have to do it together.
Right. And also, when we do, if something does come along in the next couple of weeks or months that stops these evictions, I just want to point out that how many people will already be evicted and it's too late for them because there's more. If they extend the moratorium or do something new for anyone, they're certainly not all of a sudden going to go back and put all these people who lost their homes back in their homes. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're going to be still these mass numbers of people who are just completely without an opportunity to, first of all, they're going to be homeless. And second of all, once you're homeless, the odds of you being able to make the money to get back into a home just lower by, I don't even know how much. I'm sure there's stats out there that show that it's much worse off. I mean, there's a reason that homeless people can't just find a job and get themselves off the streets. It's just not that simple.
Right. Yeah. The CDC on Tuesday issued an order banning landlords from evicting tenants. So this is going to face like legal challenges. I mean, hopefully that stops another instance of this from happening. And,
right, but who even knew the CDC could do this? And if the CDC could have done this, why wasn't this done back in March, April, May?
Of course.
I mean, this is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And can the CDC even do this? Or is this just Trump's CDC trying to make himself look good before November?
Right, exactly.
And they actually aren't stopping a single eviction. It's just all words. I mean, it's honestly infuriating. And you know what? There's a lot of blame to go around. And I don't think, it's obviously not the government needs to, the number one problem here is the government. They should have stepped in and stopped this, whether it was just a moratorium, whether it was somehow funding the landlords and saying this covers their rent and you can't ask them for any more rent as long as you receive this funding from us, whatever it is. Still, what I've seen from the landlords, there's no activism from the landlord side saying to the federal government, we need help. I mean, I've seen that landlords actually put together protests and none of them say, go after the federal government, and then go after state government saying, we need help, we need help. These are all protests that I've seen that say, stop the moratorium, let us get evictions going. Like where is your mind at? First of all, it's not even smart because you're basically still putting yourself in the same position because once those people are evicted, who knows if you even find the tenant. I mean, landlords across this country should be going after the government. If there was a mass movement of landlords, you know how fast Trump would probably move to fix things and fund them and give them money. But no, the landlords across this country are going after the tenants. And it's honestly one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my life. Well, and this goes for honestly, it goes for every single landlord. I know people try to go, oh no, there's those small business landlords and yes, there's a few of those across the country who get a nice puff piece about how they're not asking for money from their tenants. Good for them. But the mass movement of landlords across this country are begging for their tenants to be evicted, not for the federal government to bail them out. And it's demented.
Well, it makes perfect sense for them because then, if the government had programs to give the money to people to give to the landlords' taxes might go up. So it's coming out of their pocket one way or another. I guess that's the idea. So they would they're going to stand against anything that helps poor people or helps people on the bottom. That's just the politics of the landowning class. Sorry, I'm sure they're I said landowning. I'm so angry. Rentier class, right? And that's probably not going to change. I'm sure, not all landlords, whatever, but kind of feel like Mao had the right idea on that.
Who do they think is filling these apartments when they evict these people?
Well, all they need to do is get one person. They're not thinking about this as a wide scale. I mean, I saw an article about house flippers. House flippers are doing fine now. They're still selling houses because people are moving out to, there's people are moving, right? So all you need to do is get one that can pay. But I also want to say, with regards to people in the media, if I believed in hell, and I thought you could sin your way there with what you do in the media. I think anybody emphasizing property damage at our historical moment right now, when this is happening, belongs there. I think I agree with Jamie. This is absolutely the most disgusting thing we've witnessed, and that you're going to emphasize some people lighting fireworks at a courthouse. Get fucked. And
yeah, I will. And on that note, credit where it's due. That was actually a very well done CNN piece where maybe a little bit too nice on the cop, but overall the empathy was with the families who were losing their homes, which is not always what we see from mainstream media,
Yeah. I mean, they're supposed to be objective, but I always dislike it when evictions are treated as, well, there's nothing else you can do. If you don't have a job, you can't get money and then you can't pay your rent. And there are no jobs. So you people you're just fucked.
Particularly when there's an exception made in that guy's case of the day. Oh, she's too old. There's a pandemic on, you idiot. Ignore the judge. The judge is that asshole.
Yeah. There are lots of other ways that they could be doing this. Tell the landlords to take a fucking haircut. Yes. Why is it that something that is essentially you're investing in the stock market when you buy property, and that investment may or may not result in a profit. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And that's just a risk that you have to take. Why is the state protecting the investments of these speculators at the expense of regular working class people? And also it shows, I know I'm always banging on about this, but I think this is a very concrete instance of showing the purpose that the police serve in our society is to protect private property, to protect capital. They do not exist to help people. They do not exist to serve.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jamie, because I've never seen any sort of industry where that's not taken into account. Whether we could rag on them all the time, the tech startup dudes, the Wall Street guys, all terrible sorts of businesses. But when they take a loss, they write it off. They know it's business, and that's it. With the real estate industry, there's no such thing as a loss. it's not even in their head. I've never seen anything like it. They believe that no matter what, they always need to make money on their investment, and there's no such thing as a cost of doing business to them. I mean, you even see it when something goes wrong in your apartment. They automatically think, oh, that means time to raise your rent. No, like the cost of doing business is there's certain things you take a hit on as the business owner. Restaurants do it when, they screw up someone's order. Retail places do it when people return items that they used or something like that. Real estate is the only industry where they do not think that they have any sort of cost of doing business, and it's insanity.
Well, there is a reason that our economy became financialized the way that it did, and all of the capital moved from industrial productive capital, like, making things in factories, to the fire sector, finance, insurance, and real estate, and that is the development of capitalism into the neoliberal era. So if we want to fix these problems, if we want to see housing as return it to its use value, something that people created because we need it to survive. We all need shelter, right? Rather than its exchange value on the market, basically an investment. We have to go at the source. And can I read a quote from David Graeber? Because I wrote this down earlier and I think it fits. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to do it. Why am I asking permission?
Yeah, why?
I am so cucked. Okay. So it's from an interview with Graeber where he calls himself an eternal optimist. And he says that in 50 years, he thinks a new system will be in place that is not capitalism. And Graeber said it could be something even worse. It's therefore imperative that we end this taboo around trying to figure out something that might be better. I read that wrong. That we end this taboo around trying to figure out something that might be better. If we don't get something better, it will be something worse. It won't be the same. And I think we can see in this story and many of the stories we do, the neoliberal era of capitalism is in terminal crisis right now. The economy is going to have to reorder itself in order to keep on going. And it's probably going to reorder itself into something even shittier than neoliberalism if nobody does something about it. But it cannot stay the same, and it won't stay the same. And the sooner that people get that through their heads, the better.
All right. Can we take some calls, Matt?
Yeah, it's a good idea. Let's go to the phones. All right, first caller, you have the privilege of being our test dummy, because let's see if it works. 337. Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Matt. Hey, Jamie. Matt. Brendan.
Hey.
Did you all hear that?
Dominic from
Good.
Louisiana.
Perfect. Hey, Dominic, you said?
Yeah, Dominic.
Hey, Dominic. How you doing?
Doing good. So I called a couple of days ago about this, and this is just kind of, I guess, furthering awareness of this too, because this is in a red city that this is happening. I was calling to bring more attention to kind of this gumbo of insanity going on in Lafayette, Louisiana, around the police shooting for Trayford Pellerin. And things are kind of a little bit escalated right now, and it just kind of, I think, will bifurcate with both the outside agitator narrative that people do, but also when outside agitator doesn't work, there is always falling back on civility politics. Because on Monday, a couple of community activists and a national activist, Jerry Monroe. Now, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with Jerry Monroe. Probably not. Okay.
No.
He doesn't seem like he's that big a deal, but this will play into something a little bit later. They wanted to meet with the mayor to de-escalate this situation with protesters protesting this police killing for this man. And specifically, they also would like, say, the mayor to give condolences to his family for the shooting, let the family see the body, initiate conversations with the protesters, and the mayor kind of decides to just Leroy Jenkins into this in a dramatic fashion and say he doesn't want to negotiate with terrorists. And this is all internal. They tried to do the outside agitator thing a while ago. News calls them out on it constantly. And so now we're falling on civility politics, which, is probably the height of showing a lack of empathy for the entire situation. Because, hey, a person died. And now we have people that have power that are being asked to use their power to hold someone accountable. And they're saying, my feelings are hurt by what you're telling me to do, so I'm not going to do that. And it's like, you're in charge. You serve us, the people. You are not there for us to give you gratitude for doing this job. You do the job. You do not do the job. People don't like you. Is that right? That should be the agreement. So we get to the city council meetings that happened in Lafayette on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, there was a barbecue that was held outside. This was in protest to the mayor calling police to a barbecue protest outside his house on Saturday. So
right.
We got this nice little thing going on with barbecues. A right-wing militia actually comes in to help ensure the barbecue goes on, because they didn't like the fact that the mayor called the police on a person just barbecuing outside his house. So this is kind of where it's getting weird. But in the comments for the public to give during the city council meeting, there's this figure, Jerry Monroe. He apparently acts as a representative for the NFAC, the Not Fucking Around Coalition. He has a YouTube channel with like 5 videos on it. So this is why, and this guy just doesn't seem like he means much of anything. But his clip goes semi-viral because he's saying he's going to bring the NFAC to Lafayette. Well, local Congress critter, Clay Higgins, goes and makes a very ill-advised Facebook post with tagging a picture of a
right. I've heard of this part of it. Right. I've heard about this part of it. Right.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. So he goes on a rant where he basically says, you know what? If you come in armed and aggressive, which honestly is a dog whistle for, if you come in black, if you come in, I'm going to take down 10 of you myself because I'm an internet tough guy, and I'm going to drop it in 1450 FPS because apparently he kills people in HD.
Right.
So,
talk about LARPers.
Exactly. Facebook takes this post down, of course, because it actually meets the requirements for inciting violence. So Clay gets kind of a little bit pissy and makes another follow-up Facebook post in which he collectively welcomes all Americans to the front lines in the war for liberty. And then to top it all off, puts a picture of a swooping eagle with it too. Just to get that chef's kiss of America.
Right. And I remember when I heard this story, I think it was just like yesterday it happened or the day before that. And I looked into
the post Clay did was Tuesday, and yesterday, it hit the news yesterday.
Right. So I looked into Higgins, and this guy is, it's funny he'd be someone to be so bothered about armed protesters showing up, because there's a number of images of this guy over the years at like the honored guest at a Oath Keepers rally or other militia groups rally.
Oh no, he's a 3%er, Oath Keepers. This was the guy that 4 years ago did the video in the Auschwitz crematorium.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So I wonder, like you mentioned, I wonder what was different about this one. I wonder what was different about this one. I don't know if I could put my finger on it. I can't figure this out, Dominique. Why would he have a problem with this protest but not the others?
Apparently it makes him very threatened.
Right. Yeah. I wonder what it is. Maybe one day it'll hit me, but
maybe.
It is amazing how, I mean, just look at their reaction to Kyle Rittenhouse and then look at their reaction to the Patriot Prayer guy getting shot in Portland. The right has no problem with being hypocrites. It's not even that they don't realize they're saying one thing and then saying the complete opposite the next day. It's that they don't care. They're openly, their worldview is openly, when our guys do it, it is right. And when their guys do it, it is wrong. It's just period. That's it. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse was exercising his Second Amendment rights and his right to self-defense. Yet the Patriot Prayer guy was a martyr for the cause who, even though he was spraying mace and was hanging out with guys shooting paintball guns at people in Portland, they were just innocent bystanders in a situation gone awry. I mean, they were hunted for their beliefs, I think, actually, is what the right actually believes. They were hunted for being Trump supporters. This is what the right is. And, personally, this is my belief. I think whether you're a gun rights person or an anti-gun person, whether you are, with mom's demand or you're the most staunch Second Amendment activist. I do not see how guns at a protest make any sense. There could not be a more chaotic situation for guns to be present for. I mean, they should just not be there. If there's one place there should be no guns other than schools, it should be at a protest.
I mean, I'm deeply I'm deeply ambivalent about this.
Okay, Jamie, you go ahead and you talk first. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say I'm deeply ambivalent about guns in general and the idea of an armed left. But I don't know. I spoke with Faye Eckler of the Socialist Rifle Association, and she made a very convincing case that having an armed left can act as a deterrent, right? She wasn't talking about having an armed left ever being used for like an actual gunfight in the streets, because that is a dangerous idea and we would lose really fucking badly. But hearing stories like this one, or like the guy who got shot in Austin who was open carrying his gun legally, like I wonder if that bears out.
I would just say to anybody individually considering it, one, if you've had any kind of suicidal ideation, do not do it. And also, that would just be my advice personally. And also, take safety and gun, like especially if you don't come from a gun background, take gun safety more seriously than anything you've ever taken in your life. And because I think like just the statistics are that look, I agree about the deterrence. And if I lived in a state, and because of my background, I would feel comfortable having one. But statistically, I would still in the back of my mind understand that there's a chance that I accidentally discharge this is just as great as me actually using it to ward off fascists someday.
Friendly fire problems too. If you are involved,
Exactly.
if something actually happens, you could even hit an innocent bystander, and there goes someone's completely innocent bystander. I mean, even someone who's not even just someone who lives in the area, not even part of the protest. I mean, they're all innocent if they're not doing anything. You know what I mean?
Sorry, we're stepping all over the collar.
I wanted to be my parting thought on this.
Oh yeah, give us your last. Yeah, give us your last.
So last parting thoughts, and I wanted to mention about the gun thing, right? Exactly, is that it seems to be conservatives like to argue the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun, Kyle Rittenhouse, would be a good guy with a gun. But if there's not a good guy with a gun and it's a good guy with his fists, then you got to support the bad guy with the gun, because the gun is actually always good.
Right, right. That's a good point.
The gun is what's good. So,
right.
Last thing, of course, again, awareness. Trayford Pellerin, just the background on it. The guy was reported being erratic with a knife at a gas station. Police showed up. They followed the dude for a half mile to another gas station. Before he enters it, they shoot him 11 times in the back.
Which one is this? Who is this again?
This was called Trayford Pellerin. It's Lafayette, Louisiana.
All right, I'm gonna look that up.
God,
right, thank you, buddy. This was a great call. Any call that sparks this type of conversation with the group here is always a great call. Feel free to call in all the time, buddy. Take care.
It's just an overwhelming amount of police murders. It's like impossible to even keep track of them.
Right. Listen, I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, but I think, in a perfect world, if you're someone who thinks that you should even be allowed to open carry your gun, a protest, I cannot imagine a worse place for a gun.
Yes, I agree.
There's just so much going on all sides. You have the cops, the protesters, the counter protesters, people who just live in the area or passing by.
Amped up fascists. And
then there's also groups within the protesters and groups within the counter protesters who all have differing opinions of what they should do and how they should do it. It's just couldn't be a worse place for it.
Yeah.
No guns at protests, really.
It really freaked me out seeing people carrying guns around at the RNC, because there's just there's so many different factions, especially at a thing like the RNC. Like most of them are like right-wing crazy people, and seeing them carrying guns around was, I will say it has been used to varying effect, but in the past by various groups. But I mean, the classic example is the Black Panthers, who armed themselves and followed the cops around and watched them to make sure that they weren't killing people in their neighborhoods.
The Panthers are good examples in this because they took gun safety more. If you ever see Panthers holding guns, they're either pointing the muzzle straight down or straight up. Like they took the imagery of like, this is a defensive action very seriously. I think that is the model if you want to pursue this model. And I'm definitely not endorsing affirmatively that I endorse that model. But yeah, the Panthers they definitely took that seriously.
All right. Let's go to another call. Matt, put your finger in front of your webcam and bring it back so you get back into focus. You've been out of focus for a bit.
This camera, man, I tell you what.
Usually that works. If you hold your finger in front of the screen, the camera, and then just pull it back to yourself. Let's go to the next call. Yeah, that actually is much better. 253. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep, could hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, my name is Eric. I'm calling from Seattle. I just wanted to call in because I just wanted to say thank you because I used to be.
Speaking to the mic a little bit more. You're just in and out of the mic a little bit.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted to say thank you because I used to listen to a lot of Ben Shapiro, and then I started listening to you guys, and I realized, that guy's an idiot. So what I wanted to call in was about how I still watch a lot of the Daily Wire stuff because they get tons of views, and what they're saying is the other side. And I was watching. I don't know how familiar you are with the Daily Wire, but there's a guy named Michael Knowles. And he had an episode today where he talked about how statistics are dangerous because the root word of statistics from Germany is state something. And he talked about how statistics are statist and how people use statistics to justify the state and how conservatives need to not put so much weight into statistics. It's around it's around the 33-minute mark in his newest video. And I just think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And I just wanted to share you with that. Statistics isn't, I've taken.
It sounds insane, to be honest. I mean, there is a true, a critique, and it's not about statistics in general, but you should
quantification.
Right. You should have the basic knowledge, exactly what Matt said. You should have the knowledge of what these stats mean. Here's an example. If someone's to tell you that the murder rate in New York City is up 30%, you should look into it and find out what that means is that there's been 9 murders last year. Now there's 12 murders this year. It's not like, whoa, 30%. Obviously 3 more murders isn't good, but it's not the huge number that 30% makes it sound like. You know what I mean? There's quantification, there's things you should know about the statistics you're reading, but they're not bad or evil or whatever this guy is going on about.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Knowles is
I have
one of the stupidest guys. You have the clip?
Yeah.
Statistics isn't even derived from German. It's a Latin word.
Well, even biology is a relatively new one. Science, physics, for instance.
Oh, can you guys hear that?
Yeah, we're hearing it, but there's voice over voice. Is that the same clip or are there 2 clips playing?
Science to precise things that we can measure under a microscope. There's not just that kind of science, but there's also a science to society. There's also a science to history. There's a science to human affairs and politics, and that you can measure. Once you understand the science, you can know with scientific certainty how society should be governed. You can know how history will progress. You can know the end of history. You can.
I think he's skeptical of this so far. I think this isn't actually his view. So let's see if we can get
is he talking about dialectical materialism?
I was going to say, I think
correct.
He is actually taking a shot at dialectical materialism.
Right side of history. You can know all of these sorts.
Before this.
Be true, and this is the problem.
I was watching it live, so I didn't know.
Not just polls. Let's go back to something else. It's a little bit older, but it's still a very recent invention. Statistics. Lies, damned lies, and statistics. I got in trouble yesterday on the show because I made a point that conservatives, generally speaking, should shun statistics because statistics were created very recently by and for the liberal progressive establishment. What has evolved into the liberal progressive establishment? Even using the word evolved kind of plays into that narrative. Now, people were shocked. They said, Michael, what are you talking about? We need statistics. No, we don't. We can use statistics when they help us, but we've got to be very, very careful about statistics. Because I think some people, when they heard me say that, conflated statistics with facts. That's how deeply embedded this problem has become. But statistics are not facts. So statistics, in many ways, are the opposite of facts. What does statistics mean?
I mean, statistics are a type of fact, I think.
Right. This sounds like someone who obviously just doesn't understand what statistics. I mean, they don't understand what they're reading. They read a stat, didn't understand, and they went, "Statistics are bad."
Let's see what he says about the state, though.
Concept, relatively new concept. It refers to the state, data for the state.
What?
And as statism has come into its current form, statistics have taken on a very important role. The word statistics comes from the late 18th century German word Statistik. I don't know how to pronounce. I don't have a great German accent. Ja, Statistik. Late 18th century. This is derived from the New Latin Statisticum Collegium, Council of State, and the Italian word statista.
That's right? From Wikipedia.
This word, statistic in German, first introduced by Gottfried Achenwall in 1749, designated the analysis of data about the state, specifically the science of the state. And around this time...
So what is actually happening here is the etymology is true. But the issue is the only people who are capable of marshalling the kind of data gathering enterprise which would create something like statistics is a state.
At least in our current reality.
Where does he think all words derive from, though? All words come from another language. It doesn't mean it's inherently like. What does that even make any sense?
Well, it's not that it's German. It's that statistics, like that German etymology comes from. These are statistics regarding state affairs, which I mean,
right?
It's an origin story problem.
I get what you're saying, but it's still really.
He's literally just reading from the Wikipedia page. Like, if we were to play this next to what he was saying, he was just reading this. He's so lazy.
You guys
He's the laziest guy on.
Yeah. We don't need to overthink something that is basically nonsense, right?
I think the wiki even said, "Don't mind my horrible German impression."
Oh my god!
The thing about the Wikipedia page is it talks about how statistics is a mathematical branch. I'm an engineer. It's kind of ridiculous that this guy is talking about how statistics is only for the state. Even on the Wikipedia page, it talks about how the Islamic golden age, where they use statistics to break ciphers. So he's not even reading off the Wikipedia page. I don't know. I just wanted to bring this.
Yeah, wait till this guy finds out where numbers come from in general. I mean, wait till he finds out where.
The only way Knowles is consistent here is if he's an anarchist and thinks the state in whatever form should be abolished. And I don't think that's really the position Knowles takes regarding statism.
I would guess not. Although, you know what? Maybe I'm convinced. Maybe that was a convincing and smart video, and I'm an anti-stat communist now.
Look, we've been anti-math, so this sort of thing is not. It's not. I missed it. I missed the. Sorry, Jamie. I didn't mean to talk over your joke.
No, it was not a very good one. I was just hoping to get a groan from the soundboard or something. Carry on. Just about how I'm an anti-stat communist.
Oh,
we welcome jokes of all varying hilarity levels on Thursday shows here, especially when I'm around. So I need that.
Mine have been really bad lately. No one even gets that I made a joke. They're not landing. I should probably be fired.
Jokes are hard over Zoom. You don't feel there's something about being in the same room as someone when you're making a joke. You can just get that feel. It's a little bit different. It's not totally your fault.
I'll take it.
I think you guys would find me much more hilarious if you were sitting beside me today.
Yeah, I'm getting your energy.
See, that was a joke, and it bombed. So there you go. Exactly. Thanks, caller. This was a great call. Honestly, when you just voiced what you said after the video, I was taken aback because I was forgotten that you were still on the call. I was like, who is that speaking right now? But thanks. That was a great clip that you brought to our attention. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
All right. You guys want to go to another call? We've been on a roll here with the calls.
Sure. It's working super well. Let's do it.
Working, and it's very exciting.
Kowalski, do you hear me? Hold on. The call. Oh, there we go. Kowalski.
How on earth did you remember my name from a phone number?
Oh, right. Okay. My bad. You're a regular caller, so it's
That's
connected.
almost
Got it.
horrifying.
Sorry, buddy. I got to remember just to read the, right. You're the first person I did it to, but good thing you had a name that's pretty basic. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, not too bad. I'm running a tractor across the field with a disc. So just want to call in, say hi to everybody, and of course, Admiral Jamie of the Antifada Flotilla. I plan on getting on that plane soon with the other black-cladded individuals to go bring about the revolution.
I look forward to seeing you then.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, took your
We're charting
advice.
Delta now.
Did my best on social media recently to combat the lunacy that is right-wing propaganda, and it didn't go over so well with the whole Kenosha clusterfuck. But I had a line of argument I was using, and I wanted to see if you guys thought that it made any sense at all.
Go ahead. Let's hear it.
So with the whole shooting incident, I could argue that, maybe the first guy who was shot could be seen as a legitimate, form of self-defense. He was running, getting attacked, whatever. But at that point, wouldn't the shooter be obligated to put his gun down when the crowd approaches him? Because, I mean, even in any other instance, if you were legitimately defending yourself from somebody who was attacking you and a crowd that has no idea what just happened approached you, they're essentially believing they're confronting an active shooter. So if he can get away with shooting people coming after him, believing he was an active shooter, that would mean at any point of self-defense, you would have the legal right to basically just gun down as many people that would approach you. And taking that to an illogical extreme, you could say, well, I didn't know that those were actual police officers coming to get me after I defended myself. I was just shooting at anybody who I thought was a threat.
Yeah, I thought those
Because
Antifa backpacks were full of cop uniforms.
It doesn't take much to look like a cop.
Well, it's definitely a lot more. It's definitely a much bigger gray area, being that it went down in a state that doesn't have stand your ground, which is honestly one of the worst laws I've ever. You could just meet anyone with force just as long as you fit this basic criteria. Deadly force, I should say. Wisconsin, I believe the force you can use is equivalent to the force you feel that is coming for you. And if this guy is unarmed, I mean, there's an argument there with how do you then gun him down, regardless of whether he's confronting you or not.
Yeah, that would be my thoughts too. That, and again, it's you can't even put yourself into the minds of that kid, because it's and as I keep pointing out to a lot of my friends who are more right-leaning, it's
Well, also, don't call him a kid. I mean, you could definitely reference that he's 17 years old, but we have a 17-year-old.
Anybody a kid who is not over 25 because the brain is not fully matured yet.
This guy's walking around with a gun. I don't know.
I know, but
I mean, depending on the crime, I would agree with you. But if you have the wherewithal to be walking around with people who can be murdered by your deadly weapon that you have on your hands, I mean, to me, you are you think you're an adult. So, I mean, I don't know.
A lot of the people who commit shootings are children.
I get where you're coming from.
I mean, again, if this is someone who was a kid who was playing with a gun and didn't understand the concept and shot someone by accident, I totally get that person's not an adult. But if you're walking around because you want to be a law enforcement officer, because you have a hard-on for becoming a cop, and you use that opportunity to flex your muscle at a protest where you clearly are against the people who are protesting based on every opinion you've pretty much ever made online before showing up to those protests, I mean, I don't know. I have a hard time calling this person a kid. Mention he's a 17-year-old because I think his age is relevant, but I wouldn't call him a kid. But go ahead with your point. I'm sorry. I just had to. That's my pet peeve. That's all.
Well, another thing that then the conversation always then devolves into something even more stupid, because then I get called defending a pedophile because the one guy had a record, and it's like, no one could have possibly known any of this. And, it's just like with George Floyd. What was the first thing we heard right after the shooting? He was no angel. And it's like, you immediately have to be just deflect and be a hypocrite in order to make your entire worldview make sense. And I don't know if it's like people don't actually get this or if they're actively being this way, but it is just so frustrating. But as soon as you see these people in person, like, off of social media, and you confront them about it, they never defend their point. Like a few of the people I talked with on social media, very, very strong when they're behind that computer screen. But as soon as you confront them in person, suddenly they back down.
Yeah. I mean,
they're criminal. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
It's just frustrating.
I mean,
go ahead, Matt.
That shows the social component of all this, which is really what it's about. But actually, Matt, you go say what you were going to say. That's all I was going to say is like, that's because this is all socially based. And yeah, like Facebook especially is just a right-wing radicalization machine. You don't it's going down isn't getting 55 million views by some crazy old people who have no context for what's going on in America's cities, but Ben Shapiro is.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Right. Yeah, and also the looking into people's criminal history is totally irrelevant too. Yeah, like you mentioned, Kyle Rittenhouse didn't know anything about these people when he was shooting them. But also the right is harping on that first guy who was shot, Rosenbaum, because they see he has a criminal record for I think it's sexual conduct with a minor, and they see that he's a 36-year-old man. But if you look at when the crime happened, he was something like 18 years old, and we don't know the details of that case. So this guy could have got a record for basically being an 18-year-old dating a 16-year-old or something like that. We don't know what the details are for that. They're not. I couldn't find.
And not to mention, these people claim to be the party of law and order, and the law clearly states this person faced a court, did what the law had said, and was out because that's what the law had said. You don't take away the human rights of anybody, no matter how horrible the crime. Like I said, it's just basic you don't dehumanize people. Like if you do something heinous, that doesn't give the state the right to torture you. Like, this is very basic, and God, these people are frustrating. But it's nice to know in person, most of them are cowards. So, silver lining.
Right. Yeah. Kowalski, thanks for that call.
And to leave you with another slight bright note, I do want to say I have been making more arguments for Medicare for all on a materialistic basis, and a lot of people do like it. So, I mean, there is hope. Just leaving it there. And all right, I'll talk to you guys later. Admiral Jamie, I'm saluting you. Good day.
Sorry for interrupting you so much, Kowalski. You said something, and I've been looking up. My head's been in this case for like way too long now, and honestly, I know what's going to happen. What I feel in my heart of hearts is this kid is this. I did it. I did what you did. This 17-year-old is going to get off, and I think even worse than that is that he's going to make a play and become a big hero on the right and make money off of murdering people.
Shaping up to be this weird, like, reverse Funhouse Mirror, Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman thing, where he was defending himself, but he's also the kid in the case.
Right. That's a great point, Brendan. Yes.
It's going to be fucked, whatever happens next. I will say, I do not support using the carceral state to pursue justice in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that's how we got justice, how we get justice. I don't think it's designed to produce justice. I'm still not going to shed any tears or waste any breath opposing it if this guy gets prosecuted and sent to jail. That's just one of many contradictions that I live with as an abolitionist who is also extremely vindictive.
Yeah, I mean, actually, one conversation we should maybe bring up in the context is like, with regards to abolition, is the necessity probably of some sort of armed first response, just because of the massive gun problem we have in this country with all these right wingers and militia movements. Like I agree that like policing as a model is just awful and needs to be gone, but like we don't have the luxury of a whole lot of other countries where like it's underlying a lot of these issues, and including the Jacob Blake thing, is American cops. The equation is like, is there a gun in this? Is a gun going to be turned on me? I feel like it's a bigger problem in this country, particularly because of how widespread gun use is. And I wonder what your opinion is on that, Jamie.
Oh, in terms of defunding or abolishing the police because there's so many guns around? How do we deal with right-wing violence?
How do we do right-wing violence outside of the police model, basically?
I think Ruth Wilson Gilmore, great abolitionist thinker and activist, said abolition is when you change one thing that changes everything, right? Because abolition cannot happen in a vacuum. We're going to need to change a lot of other things about society in order to make a world without police and prisons possible. And I think one of those things is unwinding capitalism. One of those things is unwinding white supremacy. And in doing those things, we will also be having to defeat the white nationalist movement. So in terms of what we do in the short term, I'm not really sure, but that it is part of the long-term horizon that we're also going to need to defeat this movement and these enemies.
Yeah, some form of gun. I've de-emphasized gun control just because of where I think this country is and what I think that does politically. But it does seem like we need. I think really nationalizing the gun companies and basically removing different types of guns from the marketplace entirely, so they never ever get there, is probably the best best thing to do.
Yeah, I would say that I support gun control measures on the side of production, not so much on the side of laws impacting individuals, because as we have seen, those laws are never applied equally and they're always going to come down on the most oppressed people.
It's a police subsidy, those laws, basically.
Yeah.
Right. All right, you guys have a specific story in mind you want to hit, or should we just keep going with the calls?
Let's do
Did you say story we want to hate?
Hit.
Because I like that. Well,
we could also do a story you want to hate.
I hate most of the news these days. Probably I'm not alone in that. But one person who is fun for me to hate is Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, yeah.
She eater of ice cream, deliverer of clapbacks, Nancy Pelosi. I guess recently,
were you going with a full-on Daenerys Targaryen?
I was trying for it. But also I overslept and I'm in a weird mood. So sorry if it didn't hit. But anyway,
I think it hit very well. I wanted you to keep going. Actually,
Nancy Pelosi,
thought it worked very well.
Consumer of ice cream, bringer of clapbacks. She was in her hometown, San Francisco, wanting to get a haircut. So she went to a salon. She said it was strictly on the up and up, but apparently proper social distancing procedures were not followed by her. And a photo came out of her in the salon not wearing a mask. Do you guys know how the photo got out? I'm not sure. I feel like there's something sketchy about this, and so does Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, there it is. I know what happened, and actually, I hate to be the one to do it, but I'm gonna have to defend Nancy Pelosi on this one.
Okay. Well, I'll take the defense of whoever. Oh, damn! What's the guy who always does the sting operations? The James O'Keefe. I'll defend James O'Keefe or whoever the James O'Keefe is in this scenario.
This is a hit job on Nancy Pelosi.
The plot thickens.
The salon rents out seats to independent hairstylists who don't work for the company, don't work for the business that, runs the rest of the hair salon seats. And apparently the stylist that Nancy Pelosi hired contacts the business and says they're going in to open up to perform services for Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is told that this is on the up and up, that they'll be following the COVID procedures that allows them to do this, and there'll be one person inside the one customer inside, and that's fine. And apparently, the salon owner is upset that they can't open their entire salon because obviously they're not an independent person who just has one seat. They have multiple seats. And so they can't have all their customers come in, and they hear this and get very upset. And I believe from what it looks like, they are the ones with their own security cam footage that leaked this photo. And now apparently they are raising money off of it to try to run a grift.
Okay, so just to rephrase, Nancy Pelosi's hairdresser, who she had a relationship with, rented from some people who used that to entrap Nancy Pelosi.
Yes, and the hairstylist apparently, I don't think the hairstylist is in on this. They just rent this chair. They brought in Nancy Pelosi to perform services. The owner of the salon knew about Nancy Pelosi going in, said, okay, it was fine for you to do it, but was also upset about it and used that opportunity to take the screenshot from their security cam and use it to hit Nancy Pelosi. I mean, come on, guys. I know we don't like Pelosi too much around here, but if you got permission from someone to enter a business, you would assume that everything was on the up and up. And this business, and if it wasn't, then it's not your fault. You're the customer who has no control over these things.
Oh, well, she could have kept her mask on, I must say. And her defense was some weak shit.
Yeah, let's see it, actually.
I was having my hair washed. Do you wear a mask when you wash your hair? Actually, I managed to go get a haircut the other day, as some people noticed. She washed my hair for me. She cut my hair. I wore my mask the whole time. Not a problem.
Even still, let's consider that this is a rat F, and let's see what her response was when asked about the incident.
I put it. Oh, wait, that's just a question.
No, I've been there over the years. I've been there many times. I appreciate the question, and let me just say this: I take responsibility for trusting the word of a neighborhood salon that I've been to over the years many times, and that when they said, well, we're able to accommodate people one person at a time, and that we can set up that time, I trusted that. As it turns out, it was a setup. So I take responsibility
for trusting. Okay.
Do you think you owe the service industry an apology? I just spoke to a San Francisco barber who's a fan of yours. He supports you, but he thinks you owe the service industry an apology.
Well, I don't. I think that that this salon owes me an apology for setting up. But I will say this, in fairness to him and in sympathetic to him, we have to get our country moving again.
I mean, I can't knock her for this one. I mean, maybe we could talk about her response. Maybe she could have been more understanding in the messaging. Okay, but this was a right-wing hit, and I'm not gonna, just because I don't like whatever establishment.
Is it a right-wing hit? I mean, it's a hit.
I mean, you know who they're raising money off of and what they're doing. I mean,
but I'm just saying, here's what I'll say. That's a salon she's been to many times. Like, this isn't just some random one she did like ad hoc because of coronavirus. She says she's been to that salon many times. Why does that
stylist? I'm sure if that's the stylist.
With that stylist, I mean, yeah, it's independent, but like, I mean, she's been in that building a number of times. I mean, I feel like.
I mean, I don't know if you guys ever went to, when you were kids, you ever went to the hair salon with your moms and they went to like one of those independent stylists who rented a seat. Like, it really is.
That's where I go to one of those right now. My friend Misha.
So you would know it really is like a completely separate business. I mean, they're really not like, it's not just because you go to your stylist in that building doesn't mean you even interact with the other people who are there.
I don't know. She says she trusted that salon. I mean, I think that first of all, I think a lot of these places have a right to be pissed at her just on a policy level because of how the Democrats have handled this pandemic response. And if I was a small business owner, I would be kind of pissed. So like, honestly, I kind of don't fault them for taking the pop because like,
But they're just upset at the wrong people. I just can't get over the idea that all these small business owners who are upset that they're not making money because they can't run their business aren't taking out on the people who are in charge, the Republican Party, and demanding money. I mean, whatever the Democrats put forward.
Too.
It's the fault of the Democrats as well.
Whatever she puts forward, though, will die in the Senate, though. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, the Republicans are holding back from giving people. I mean, we could say it is the Democrats' fault for not going full board with that first
the CARES Act.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sam has
absolutely.
broken down
Absolutely.
many times the many failures that the Democrats committed in this.
Absolutely, but we could knock them on the past of where they failed all we want. But now we have to deal with where we are. And where we are right now is no matter what Democrats put forward now, it's going to get killed by the Republicans. Okay. So if small business owners want someone to go after, they should be going after the Trump administration and the Republican Party. And I say this as someone who is no fan of the Democrats. I mean, I just dealing with what we're dealing with at this point in time. And to me, right-wing hit from people who are, even if it was not meant to be a right-wing hit, it is certainly being turned into a right-wing hit. This salon...
Have we confirmed the ties of the owner of the salon in all this? Like,
I just know that they're raising money off of this.
Yeah,
what's
her name?
Salons need money.
So they're doing it for money.
I mean, one thing to raise money because you're a business that needs to raise funds.
You know what?
Trying to get your
another
thing to
let me lay my cards on the table.
Let me be clear.
I want Pelosi to lose to Shahid Buttar in this primary. And on top of that, I think there's any number of reasons she should resign from office just entirely, given her disastrous, particularly the last 2 years when she's had the House. I do think this is petty BS. It doesn't, to be honest, and there was a story of RGB not wearing a mask too. Those people should be wearing a mask, particularly because of how, I wear a mask because everybody knows. But ultimately, this is not really my big problem with Nancy Pelosi. That said, I gotta say, I think she put herself in this position to a certain extent.
Yeah. Pro tip. Okay. First of all, we can hate whatever right-wing forces are trying to use this to make hay out of it politically. We can hate Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. We can hate the small business tyrants. All right. Yeah. But if you go to a salon, you're breathing on each other, just wear a mask. I know it's very neoliberal of me to be focusing on people's individual actions when we really need policy, but people's individual, you got to do that too. You got to wear a mask, folks.
Particularly when they're representative and sort of indicative of we as a ruling elite don't really. I'm RGB, multiple survivor of many diseases. I'm not really going to give a F about what it looks like to people when I'm not wearing a mask in public.
Well, we already know that she's a selfish piece of shit. All right, otherwise she would have retired much sooner. Before now we're in this situation where the civil rights of an entire country of people hang on one frail old woman's health. Cool system.
Not to keep going here on this, not to harp on this, and also not to be forever known on the show now as the Nancy Pelosi defender. But in the video, she is wearing the mask under her chin. We don't know. This could have just been a simple moment. She could have just had a drink and she's walking back to the chair. We don't know. This is a particularly... I mean, the photo was taken from the security camera specifically to knock her. She could have been wearing her mask the entire time up until this one moment that was shared. The screenshot was shared of. Mm-hmm. I think we can't really take much from this one small screenshot, and I think it's to me it's just clearly a hit job.
For sure, it's obviously a hit job, but I think her reaction to it is indicative of Nancy Pelosi's inability to handle these situations. She should know how to deal with this by now, and not make it an issue and not make hay of it.
There are no good people in this story. Let's leave it at that. We can agree to disagree. Yeah. I understand Matt B. Nancy is your girl boss, and I respect that.
And I just want to make sure that we don't have a segment that's wholly devoted to defending her, because I think she should defend some of the members of her caucus a little bit better. And then when she starts doing that, then I'll defend her against these.
Yeah, it's still a little fresh in my mind that she would endorse Joe Kennedy in the Massachusetts race. So I'm not really inclined to do her any favors now.
Just to clear my good name as we end this. This is more about being anti-right-wing grifts and dishonest attacks than my love for Nancy Pelosi.
Okay.
Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Whatever you say.
All right, you guys have any other stories you want to hate, or do you want to?
I think
go
I
back
got
to
the hate out. I think let's do one more call and then call it a day.
2
right,
minutes
cool.
hate. 2 minutes hate.
702. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi. Is this
Hey.
me?
Yep, you are on.
Sorry.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Sorry?
What's your name?
Hi, my
Where are you
name's
calling
Joseph.
from?
I'm calling from Las Vegas.
What would you like to talk about today?
Sorry. There's a bit of a delay. So I'm another guy who wants to talk about the Rittenhouse fucking bullshit.
Go ahead.
I'm a 2A advocate, but I'm coming from a leftist perspective. So I skimmed through your misinformation document,
right?
And the one thing I didn't see that I've been seeing, I've seen Lynn Wood tweet out and an article referenced that tweet that rifle did not belong to Rittenhouse, and that and it stayed in Wisconsin. And I've been seeing a lot of misinformation on Twitter that he brought it across state lines, which is not true. Now, I'm not defending anything about what he did. I'm just saying I wanted to bring that up because I've been seeing a lot about that, and that to me is gross. That makes it far more worse of a situation because he got the firearm from somewhere else, which raises more questions in my head about if his whereabouts was known by his parents, which might be not as of a big deal. But to me, this is a much bigger implication of the people involved.
Right. I didn't include that that new information that came out that he might have got this rifle, the AK, whatever firearm he had, from within Wisconsin. I didn't include that in my thing because honestly, that claim completely comes from his lawyers. So there's no way really where I can't confirm or deny that. There's nothing. That's not something I could view on video. That's not something that I can confirm. I mean, his lawyers obviously are going to make the case that he's innocent, so they're going to try to make that case. Whether he did or not, I don't know. That's something I can't comment on yet. I don't know. I mean, they think that him having the firearm, him receiving the firearm from a buddy in Wisconsin, they think it obviously is good to them because they wouldn't have mentioned it and harped on it otherwise. To them, I think the crossing the state lines is going to get him into deeper shit. But we don't know. We don't know. And you bring up a good point. Maybe in some ways that's something that may even look worse for him. The fact that he borrowed a firearm. I don't know what the laws are in Wisconsin about borrowing a firearm and if there's any sorts of anything you need to go through to do that, especially if you're 17 years old and are underage. I don't know what the details are, though. We do know that his mom dropped him off at the protest, though. That is something that's been discussed. I mean, I don't know.
So you think that might help him towards the case as far as just
I think his lawyers think it will, because otherwise they wouldn't make it such a big deal. But
so
you bring up a point too that it could be negative. It's an ethical
problem, right? I just find it an ethical problem. In the state of Nevada, our laws change all the time, and I don't think there's any law against borrowing because there's no gun registration. So, and to me, that's a problem, among other things as far as gun ownership. But like I said, I'm very pro-gun, but this entire incident is damaging. But right-leaning people don't care about details. They just like the fact that he killed protesters, and I think that's pretty much all they're focusing on.
Right. I want to point out
but
that
to me, this is far more damaging for the.
We can't really give anything but our opinion on something like this. Like, it's my opinion that he was, the protesters he shot were, that he was not acting in self-defense for at least a few of them, if not all of them. I mean, but my debunking the misinformation was just debunking things that the right is spreading that has no bearing really on whether or not he's can be deemed guilty or not. These are just things that I think can't be used because they're not true. Like I can't debunk whether he was acting in self-defense or not. I just, you can't do that. It's not, I wasn't in his mind. I wasn't there on the ground. I don't know how the jury is gonna absorb the information. Like there's no one who could debunk that. We could just debunk different points that will be used to argue in favor of that. That's all. We can't really debunk whether he was acting in self-defense or not. It's just not possible.
Yeah, everything muddies it up anyway. So
right,
all the details. So.
Right.
All right. Well,
but honestly, it didn't even occur to me that I liked your idea that could, because it didn't even occur to me that there are some ways that can be. And you are someone who said you're a gun rights person. Did not occur to me that there could possibly be laws that make it worse to actually borrow a gun than bring your own. Right.
Right. Well, any kind of gun control or gun legislation, it just acts against the Second Amendment, which personally, I don't believe in open carry or even carry concealed. I think that's a problem in of itself, but I don't believe that's what the Second Amendment really protects us of. I think gun ownership is important, but it has been bastardized and deviated from the actual right that we hold, by the right-leaning people.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right.
So.
All right. Thanks for the call. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cool.
Can I return for a second to the question Matt asked me the last time we were talking about the story? I feel like I'm really off my game today, but this just occurred to me because, on the question of how do we deal with right-wing violence, if we want to defund and disarm the police are on the side of right-wing violence right now. There is an enormous amount of overlap between the cops and white power gangs, as has been documented in a bunch of different news stories that have come out recently. The cops are on their side. So the idea that the cops are an effective way to deal with right-wing violence when they're perpetrating right-wing violence every day is, pretty clearly flawed.
No, I mean, I say like the police are not the model for this, but we will need some sort of armed first response to like confront them. I think, particularly if we went through and defunded the police, like those people.
Yeah, I mean, Mariame Kaba, another person who writes about this stuff, is very clear that transformative or restorative justice, these alternate community modes of accountability, they're not for everyone, and they're not for class enemies, and they're not for cops. So in order to get to a world without police and prisons, we are going to have to deal with some enemies first. And I think right-wing militias definitely qualify.
Right. Well, also, even for those people, there has to be some sort of, in my opinion, there has to be some sort of remorse or some sort of, action done that shows that they're not like part of what I cover, people who come out of the white supremacist movements. I mean, it's, these people show in their actions, a lot of these people who lead these movements go off and literally dedicate their lives to making sure that, young white men don't fall into this trap the same way they did. I mean, to me, there's no better way of showing you are truly, you've truly atoned for your actions than something like that. So, to me, if you could do something like that, there's always a coming back from whatever you've done. Mm-hmm. Dare I say, even for someone who shoots 3 people at a protest, but they have to do something to show that they are they want to right their wrong. I mean, first it comes to even admitting they did wrong too. I mean, that's another step.
Absolutely. And I also think unwinding the kind of alienation that everyone is experiencing in this modern world will take a lot of the wind out of the sails of these radical right-wing movements that really count on the fact that there are a bunch of young, alienated white men out there. So that's most of who's doing this, right? Who have no community, have no identity, and the right gives them some of that.
Right. All right, guys, is there anything else you want to hit for today? Or, I mean, there's a lot more calls, but we obviously can't get to all of them. Oh, I didn't read any IMs. I don't know if...
let's do a couple. Let's do like 3 IMs. And
all right, cool. So, RIP David Graeber says foreign agent. Here you go, Matt. Game recommendations for your Twitch from Thick Mulvaney. This is The Police. I have not heard of this game. Have you?
I have not heard of that game, no. This is The Police.
The Police.
I am going to probably be playing Flight Simulator for the next 90 years. Are you familiar with Flight Simulator?
I am. It's the Microsoft Flight Simulator game.
Yeah, right? And many photorealistic cities. It's very very addicting.
I heard Epstein's Island is in there.
It's in there. I mean, just a photorealistic Brooklyn. I was flying over Brooklyn, flying my walk to work. Remember what that was like.
Don't segue from Epstein's Island being in a video game.
Well, it's okay. I guess we should say it's in the video game because literally everything is in the video game. Right, every island is in the video game.
Mm-hmm. Man, you must really miss I gotta say, I kind of miss riding my bike to work because it was pretty much the only exercise I was getting, and we had so much nice weather during the quarantine when I would have been riding my bike to work. But I guess I could still just ride there and ride back again.
Just ride bike, yeah.
I missed this call. Apparently, someone was having us. I didn't see. They are working with the LA Tenancy Union and wanted to call in, but they're not on the line right now.
I'll check on.
Try again.
Yep.
The topical topic.
Right. If you want to laugh at Knowles, look up the debate he had with Hassan Piker. He was so delusional when it came to COVID stats, says Alan. He had a debate with Hassan. I gotta watch that now. That guy looks like he is unable to even do a solo show, let alone a debate. So
I mean, he was bad with COVID stats because stats are for the state, obviously.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think Hassan benefits from people thinking that he's a himbo, and then they think it's going to be easy to debate him, and then he just smacks him in the face 3 ways.
Congressional baseball fan says, look, recently I've been hearing about these buses and planes that Antifa's been purchasing, but now we're talking about new expenses for backpacks and communication devices. Frankly, I'm starting to get very concerned about our ability to follow parliamentary procedures. None of these expenditures are documented in the meeting minutes. Come on, guys. I CC'd you all with a copy of Robert's Rules of Order and a link to the Google Doc for your signature of acknowledgement. Please stay tuned. You'll be receiving a Survey Monkey soon.
I mean, Jamie already expensed a pirate ship for this show. So.
Right. And did not run that by any of us. I was just shocked when she apparently is buying cannonballs too. How much does that cost?
The canvas for the masts just arrived.
It's worth it, guys. Trust me. I might be getting a catapult too soon, so don't tell Sam.
I have 8 trebuchet on the way.
Maybe some bayonets.
Elvin said that Joe Biden is gone. He's on CBS right now and just said he thinks Breonna Taylor should be charged. Oh, that's a bad that's a bad one. Political Fun Time Happy Hour Deluxe. We can end on this one because it's after me. Matt B, I love you, but you have this Pelosi thing entirely ass backwards.
There you go. All right, folks. We'll be back with Sam tomorrow and possibly Matt Binder again next Thursday. I would imagine, since that seems to be the trend of these things.
All right, I'll let you guys know when Sam tells me, roughly 5 p.m. on Wednesday evening.
All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there.